So what about when you're in a season you do not want to be in? Sometimes we're tempted just to keep our bags packed and wait until God moves us out of that season. But we learn from Jeremiah 29, 4-7, that God has something for us in that season. And we may not think that we have much to offer when we're in a season we don't want to be in, but we just have to show up. God is the one who does the work, and He will use whatever small step you are willing to take. So all those years that I was going, Lord, I want to be a wife, I want to be a mom, I want to be a wife, I want to be a mom, I suddenly heard God say, well, do you really want to be a mom? Because if you're not hung up on the biology piece, I got a lot of kids in the world who need a mom. So I began to think about just the times in youth ministry when that one student would be in my group who didn't have such great parents. And I would come alongside that student a little more specially because God had freed me up to do that. Because my eyes were open, and that's what some of you need to do. Sometimes we're so in our pain that we close our eyes to everything else. God may be doing something around you right now that He wants you to participate in. And you just have to open your eyes. And so when I was in my season of between youth ministries and I was still speaking, I wanted to volunteer, but I decided that I wanted to go to the inner city. Because I'd been to the inner city with my suburban youth group and I knew there were great needs. So once a week, I'd travel from Orange County to LA. And I would work with this organization called Say Yes, Save America's Youth, Yes. And it was an after-school program for kids that lived on Skid Row in Los Angeles. And there was this one girl that I met, and just a beautiful girl, beautiful smile. She was 11 years old, but I noticed that she wore the same thing all the time, and she kind of started smelling a little bit, and I was like, gosh, what's her story? So I asked the guy, and he said, oh, it's so sad. You know, most of the kids end up with their moms, but Sanika, she ended up with her dad because her mom's a drug addict on the street. And her dad's fathered about 20 different kids, all with different women. And she lives with him. And I was like, oh, my word. So then God began to speak to me. And you know what that's like when that still small voice, like, hey, remember that stuff about wanting to be a mom? Like, how about like maybe giving some mom stuff to this girl? Now, I don't know what you do when God's Spirit starts talking to you, but I usually do the very spiritual act of arguing with God about why I can't do that particular thing. And often that happens in our heart. We're like, no, yes, no, yes. And so I thought, oh, what the heck? I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just going to walk up to her and say, hey, what would it be like if I came early and picked you up from school and we spent some time together before Say Yes? And of course she was like, that'd be awesome. So that first day that I did that, I didn't know what I was going to do. I said, why don't you show me where you live? And so she took me to her Skid Row hotel. She was proud because she didn't live on the street. She lived in a hotel room. Now, I don't know where or if you've been to one of those hotels, but they're filthy, dirty places you would not even want to go, let alone live. And she's taking me by the hand because, you guys, she had never been anywhere else. So she's proud. And I am just walking like I'm having an out-of-body experience. She takes me to her room, and I'll never forget what I saw. It was just filthy, and she had a Bunsen burner. That was their stove, and you could tell just all kinds of things went on in that room. And all her clothes were piled in the tub. And literally, you guys, I was like, what in the world am I going to do? I mean, you know, some of you have been on mission trips. It's not like you just sit there and go, well, let's do a Bible study. I mean, it was like, what do I do? So I saw the clothes in the tub, and I remembered that she had kind of was smelling. I was like, okay, why don't we take your clothes and we'll go to the laundromat? She was like, okay. So we pile up her clothes, get in the car, go to the laundromat. I bought her some soap. I bought her a razor. You know that verse of becoming the fragrance of Christ took on a whole new meaning for me. That's my ministry, man. Okay, I can do this. It was simple. It always is. It always is. And so we just hung out together. And slowly but surely, I got to actually take her on overnights. And she'd come to Orange County, and then I would bring her back. And it was hard for her, but she got a vision for life outside of Skid Row. And then one day I noticed that she was putting on weight. And of course, you never say anything to a girl who's growing up who's putting on weight. But after a while, it became obvious to me. And so I took her to the doctor, and she was 5 months pregnant and didn't even know it. That's how disconnected she was from her body. You know, most kids have their baby. She was 15, but she had seen life outside of Skid Row, so she wanted something different for her baby. So we poured through adoption books. She picked a couple, and then she had her baby 3 weeks early, and I'm driving to the hospital, and I get the call from the adoption agency that the couple decided they wanted a girl. She had had a boy. I'm like, are you kidding me? So when I got to the hospital room, I actually have a picture of what this little child looked like. He was the most precious little boy you've ever seen, all by himself on a bassinet. Sanika had just had the child. She was asleep, and I was like, oh, my word. And I just prayed over this child. I said, Lord, you must have a plan for this. She wants to give this child a better life. So about a week later, I was talking to one of my great friends, and she had all her 4 kids in a Christian school. She said, you know, there's this couple at school. They're both teachers, and they've been trying to have a child for 7 years. We've been praying for them. I was like, do you think that they'd be open to a phone call? She goes, I don't know, but I'll get their number. So sure enough, they said, sure, we'd love to meet her. So we ended up going down to this couple. Their names are Tim and Lisa. And with a high five and a yes, my girl decided they were going to be the parents of her baby. And you have to know something about this baby. Was half Mexican, half African American. Tim is Indian black, and Lisa is Puerto Rican. This child looks like it just came out of her. And she ended up adopting 2 more kids because she never could have kids. That was her God story. And they were all from inner city girls. So this child I got to watch grow up, and you'll see a picture of him playing soccer, and he was amazing. And then there's another picture of him where he actually received an award at Mariners Christian School, and it was the award for integrity. This boy grew up. My girl is now an adult. She lives in Los Angeles. She has 3 more kids, and she wanted to see her Timothy. And so he is now 16 years old, and he drove to see her, and this next picture shows her and him all grown up. It's a God story I never could have dreamed, and guess where it started? With me just saying, okay, Lord, I'll love her. Sometimes we feel reluctant to take a step of faith, but we learn from that story that God is the one who does the work. We just have to be willing to show up, and he can use whatever small step we're willing to take. And remember, if you're living in a season where you have some unmet desire, never give up. You have a God who can do the impossible. And sometimes it looks like everything is dead just before the impossible happens. We learned that from Ezekiel's vision this week. As he looked at the valley of dead bones, he saw no hope. And maybe you're in a season where you see no hope. And in that vision, Ezekiel saw the dead come to life. It was God's way of showing him he could do anything, and he can. So you hold on. Your vision may become a reality in ways you never dreamed. But in the meantime, take that step of faith, because you may be involved in a story that you never would have been in had you not taken that step. So now take some time and talk about that step of faith that you can take right now in this season.